Well, this is I guess the last video in the series. It's a juicy one. This is my boy George story and the truth of what I went through. But this story is so heavy that I'm going to break it into two parts. I'm only going to tell you part one. I'm saving part two for a book or a Netflix series or something like that. Because if I tell that, I mean, literally, I would have the world's press on my doorstep from stuff that I've heard. So, it's not going to happen. But what I will tell you is what led up to my friend's death in London. My friend died in Boy George's house, and his mother went over. There was an investigation through Scotland Yard, and stuff she told me directly was pretty deep, and if I said it now, I'd have to literally have news cameras on my thing. Anyway, let's forget about that. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about what happened, because I wasn't in London when that happened, by the way, so that's all hearsay. But I will tell you my boy George story, and a lot of my close friends know this, and I'm telling it. There was a club in New York called Area Club, and it was amazing. It was basically this warehouse, and every month they would close for a couple of days, and they would completely renovate the place. I mean, put up new walls. Once they dug a hole in the floor and put a glass over it, and there were sharks swimming underneath it. The other time I went in, and the place had giant bushes that were like 7 feet high, and the whole club, with the disco system and the lights, was a maze, and you made your way into the middle of the dance floor. One time they had holes in the wall and people's heads stuck through that were like live statues that would occasionally just move and stuff like that. To be on their mailing list was amazing. Like for Halloween, they send you a box with a fake dead finger in it. They'd send you a handkerchief with whatever their party was that day. They were known to be very exclusive, very hard to get into. It was like a downtown underground Studio 54. It was after Studio 54 when the Palladium was open and the whole Studio 54 thing fell apart. But truly amazing, really amazing, right? They opened for a couple of years, and every month it was something completely different. Just unbelievable. So one of my friends stuck his head through the wall. His name was Zet. His real name was Bernard, but Z-E-T-T-E, and I wound up producing a Chic record, Zet La Freak, with him. He sang in a deep voice, but he was a performance artist, and he would do stuff at the club, and he was kind of well known. And one day I get a phone call, like on a Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday night. Zed calls me up and says, "Boy George was just in the club." And I went, "Oh, how cool," right? "Yeah, that's cool. He wants to work with you." And I went, "Me?" He goes, "Yeah, him and his friend Marilyn. It's George's birthday party coming up next week, or in 2 weeks, or whatever the time frame it was, within a week or two. And Marilyn is supposed to surprise George with a song on stage at the Palladium." And I said, "Oh, and they want you to produce it." I went, "Oh, great. Well, give them my number." You hang up the phone and you go, "Yeah, whatever, somebody was drunk or high and said something." Anyway, a couple of days later, I get a phone call. I pick up the phone. "Hello, this is George." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I know you're going to call. Hi, what's up? Well, listen, we're going to do the song. We're going to do Spirit in the Sky. We're going to do it at the Palladium. It's supposed to be a surprise for my birthday, but I know about it, so, I'm going to take control of the whole thing." And I said, "Oh, okay, great. And how about we come to your studio in Brooklyn?" I think he called me like on a Saturday or a Sunday. "Tomorrow, Monday, I said, okay. I said, "I have a very little small studio in my bedroom, but don't worry, I'll work something out where we can get stuff done." And hung up the phone. Oh, he said he was going to be there 3 o'clock the next day. Hung up the phone, and of course I scrambled. I called Michael Rudetsky, who's the guy who died in his apartment, in his house. Michael was my very best friend. He was straight. We were not lovers, any kind of stupid stuff like that. But he was my really, really closest, best friend. I could tell him anything. He could tell me anything. We were buddies, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And Michael was a genius. He was great at writing music. He went to Oberlin College and knew, went to Berkeley. He went to Berkeley and knew music theory when I couldn't read or write music. So Michael comes over the next day, dressed up. I'm there. I had told my sister that Boy George was coming, and I lived on 73rd Street in Bay Parkway, Brooklyn, in a little semi-detached house, like an Archie Bunker house, but bigger, you know, two houses attached in the center. And my sister told the whole neighborhood, because they knew her brother was man, Parrish, told the whole neighborhood that Boy George was coming, and this is really at the height of his career. And George was supposed to come at 3 o'clock, and around 2 o'clock I noticed people like standing behind trees and, you know, gathering around the front of the house. And I'm like, I was on the second floor, and I leaned down and I, what's going on? We're here to see Boy George. And I said, no, that's just a lie. Well, obviously you're all dressed up, something's going on. I said, no. And more people, and when I tell you, you look at those pictures of 10 people abreast hanging out in front of a place, all, you know, standing there. I said, George is not going to come. He knows you're here. The limousine is down the block. You know, there's a spy. I made up some sort of story. There's a spy, and when you guys clear out, George is going to show up because he doesn't want to be hassled by people. And it's around 3 o'clock, and the crowd scatters, and people are suddenly sitting on the porches across the street of houses that aren't even theirs, and every porch had somebody on it, and, you know, the driveways, people are leaning against the driveway smoking cigarettes in houses that, you know, on other people's property because Boy George was going to come. So 3 o'clock comes, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, it's starting to get dark, and I turned to Michael, and we had catered food. The little money that I had, I went out to the Italian deli. I didn't know what to do, and I got a tray of, you know, like prosciutto and mozzarella, and, you know, I did the best I could, right? And some soda and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I said, I don't think George is coming. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I said, you know what? Let's everybody go home. This was a farce. I probably didn't even speak to George. And just as Michael and I were heading down the stairs, I was going to say goodbye to him downstairs at the front door, I hear screaming outside, like the Beatles showed up. And I run upstairs and I look out the window and I see a limo pulling down, and the window's open, and Marilyn's looking out of the window like, where the hell are we in the middle of Brooklyn? Kids are screaming and starting to get there. I said, Michael, you better get down there. I live in a tough neighborhood in Brooklyn. You know, these guys are going to rip them apart, right? So Michael goes down, opens the door, and I'm upstairs now. I'm nervous. I've never met Boy George before, you know what I mean? It's a big deal. George comes up in the house, and I'm 6'4". George is tall like me. People think he's a small little petite guy. He's a big, tall dude like me, right? And eye to eye, and hello, please, so you're a man, Parrish? I said, yeah, do I call you Boy, George, you know, Mr. O'Dowd? Just George. I said, okay, great. I didn't have much furniture in my house. I had come from the city. I lost my loft. I had a round wooden table, and we all sat down, and George said, look, we're going to do this. I said, yeah. I had called my friend Steve Remote, who's an amazing engineer. He had a recording truck. He put it in the drive. We managed to just barely get it between the two buildings in the driveway. And we rented a $10,000 Fairlight synthesizer from Audio Force. Something called Audio Toys. I can't remember the name of it. I think it was like $200 or $300 for that. The truck was $5,000, which was fine. And then I normally charge, you know, when you have a big recording artist, back in those days, you charge a producer with a name, which is what I had, charged $10,000, but I was going to do it for $5,000 because it was George, and I really wanted to work on this project and have it as a credit, right? So basically, there's a $10,000 bill sitting there, round up a $10,000 bill. So George comes up, sits on tape. Look, we're going to put this record out. We're going to split it, 3-4 ways. Everybody has even credits, and so on and so on and so on. And let's get to work. I said, great. He goes, where's your studio? I said, I got a surprise. I got a professional 24-track recording truck in the driveway. We rented a $100,000 Fairlight synthesizer, which is what Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Grace Jones and Art of Noise and all these big groups used. And, we're professional sound, professional recording and all that. We walk downstairs. My father opens up the door and sees him. Now, George wasn't in makeup. People think he walks around like that. No, he just looked like some guy, you know what I mean? He had, I think he had a little stubble, just a tall, dude, dressed in dark. And my father said, "Oh, Mr. George, do I call you boy or do I call you George? Pleased to meet you." And he goes, "Oh, honey, I don't care what you call me. Don't dish me." And my father goes, "What?" I said, "Never mind, Dad, never mind." We go down, we go in my driveway, we get up into the truck, and we start doing the basics for Spirit in the Sky. Marilyn sat off to the side, and he was getting tired really quickly. He didn't like the fact that he was just sitting there, and we're doing a lot of technical programming on the Fairlight and figuring out which bass lines to use. And it was around 9, 10 o'clock at night. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, Marilyn says, "Oh, I'm going to go out. I'm going to get some fresh air." And he opens the door of the truck. It was air conditioned, and steps outside. It was the summertime, and takes off. And then about an hour later, I went, Marilyn didn't come back. I live in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. These dudes will hang them from the, Marilyn had like a pashmina, and she was fierce. And I said, "They'll hang them from the street lamps." And George says, "Don't worry, I'll go get him. George steps out of the thing. We work on a little more about 4:30, and I remember because it was just barely starting to get light. It was still dark, but almost starting to get light, because the sun came up around 5 o'clock in the morning in the summer. I said, "You know what? I'm going out there. Something's wrong. Neither one of them have come back." And I go outside, and Marilyn's laying across the bricks on my house, and George is pitching, pennies, against the wall of the bricks of my house, with Vinny, who had white sneakers on and just a little white, disco shorts, no shirt, and a gold chain. And I said, "George, are you okay?" He goes, get away, I'm fine. I'm like, "Okay, great, you guys are having fun." And suddenly I hear, and there's people hanging around watching George and Marilyn, and someone goes, "Teresa, get the camera!" And this other woman came with a tray with coffee and donuts, and we finished up stuff. We left around 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and packed everything down. His limo came, and then he left. The next morning, I get a phone call around 9 at 10 a.m. I didn't realize George had been up all night. "We're going to move this to the Hit Factory in New York." I think it was the Hit Factory. "And we're going to, take the 24-track tape and finish it there." I'm like, "Okay, great." And I called Steve, and I said, "Look, I'll get you your money, Steve Remote. I'll get you your money. You know what I mean? George has to pay me. I'll pay you. Everything's cool and everything's fine." We worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at the Hit Factory, finishing up Spirit in the Sky. He wanted background singers. He hired Jocelyn Brown, somebody else's guy, and Diva Gray. And I can't remember what group Diva Gray is, forgive me. But she wasn't Patti LaBelle's backup singer, but some group like that. She was a big backup singer and soulful stuff. Now, I remember when we were in the studio, Michael would take the Long Island Railroad into Brooklyn on the subway, meet me, and then we would both go into Manhattan on the N train and get off at 57th Street, 51st Street, the local, 49th Street, and then walk up to 57th Street and walk down to 54th Street where the studio was. I mean, we were so poor. I mean, I borrowed money from my father to get on the subway, kind of a deal, or Michael lent it to me or something like that. And I had my $1,000 Lynn drum machine, I remember the last day. And we were sitting there. We didn't have money for food. We got there at 2 in the afternoon, and it went until 5 or 6 the next morning. We were really punching this out. And we were starving. And George had ordered a giant buffet of food and sat there and ate it in front of us. And we must have looked like the two kids in The Little Rascal, pushing our nose against the glass, as he's eating. We were, in the same room, but I remember we were like the Little Rascals. Our stomachs were growling. He didn't offer us anything. He didn't have to, but I mean, really didn't say, "Hey, you guys hungry? You've been here for 9 hours already. I'm ordering all this food." Okay, whatever. Fuck you, whatever. So, Michael, I think, had money to go home, but I didn't. And I said, "Michael, can you lend me money to get home? I've got the Lynn drum, I don't want to really go on the subway," but he was going to go to his girlfriend's house. And he says, I don't have it. I just have like, you know, whatever it was, a dollar to get on the subway or something like that. And Michael left around 3 o'clock in the morning. And well, actually, before he left, George had this wad of money. You ever see like when the gangsters have like wads of money? And he peeled off a couple of $100 for Jocelyn Brown, a couple of $100 for Diva Gray for doing background vocals. We were standing in the hallway right in front of him watching him. And they left, and then shortly after Michael left, and I was there with George, and I said, George, you're going to be another hour or two. You have a limousine sitting outside with the engine running, which you pay for by the hour. I'd like to go home to Brooklyn. I don't care that it's a limo. I just don't want to take this $1,000 drum machine on New York City subway where you get mugged, you know, through Times Square in the middle of the night. I didn't even have a bag to put it in. And George said, don't worry, you can use the car, but wait till I'm finished. It's going to drop me off at the Helmsley Palace, and then I'll have the car take you back to Brooklyn, and then he can leave. Okay, and I remember sitting there, I was exhausted, I was tired, barely keep my eyes open. We finish up at 6 a.m., it was just light outside. George says, come on, get in the car. Okay, I get in the car. And asking me some questions, being friendly, small talk. I mean, we were talking the whole time, you know what I mean? Small talk, we get to the Helmsley Palace. George opens the door and reaches in, reaches his hand and he says, come on, get out. And I said, wait, I'm gonna go to Brooklyn. Oh, no, this car has to go home. I'm gonna call you another car. And of course, stupid, I'm going, okay, just come on upstairs. Okay, you know. So I have my drum machine, I go up to George's. He stayed at the Helmsley Palace. It was a 2-story high suite. It was on the corner of the Helmsley Palace, right by St. Patrick's Cathedral on 5th Avenue, Madison Avenue entry, something like that. It was right there. The place was a mess. And I remember he had the photo proofs. He had that album cover where it was red. He had like the red china. It was like almost a Chinese chandelier he was wearing on his head. He had those, the Leica 4x5 prints, and some of them were circles and some of the X. He was going through the proof sheets to see which one he liked. And he had a shirt, and I think somebody said it was made by Paco Rabanne. It was all those pull top. In the old days, Pepsi cans had pull tops that you would take off, and there would be a ring and a little piece of metal. And they wound up outlawing them to the new ones we have now, because those were littered all over New York City and all over the places. And somebody had taken them and braided them together into this incredible shirt. I remember lifting it. Some famous designer, fashion people out there probably know what that is. So we're up there, we sit on the couch, and it's becoming clear that George is putting the moves on me. And I said, George, I just want to go home. Well, come on, why don't you just sleep in the other room with me? I want to go home. What's the big deal? Come on, we can have some fun. I want to go home. I was a pretty little boy, people hit up on me, but no, I'm not in the mood for this. It's 6 in the morning. I haven't been up all night, and I don't want to go in the other room. And after 3 or 4 attempts of no, George went into the other room, came out with a pillow and a blanket and threw it at me and said, I'll deal with you in the morning. Went back into his room, slammed the door, and fell asleep. I got up around noon. I slept on the couch. I don't have any money. I have my drum machine. And I said, God, I want to go home. We have to be at the Palladium tonight. We have to be there around 4 or 5 o'clock for rehearsal or something like that. It was almost noon, and I wanted to go home and take a shower. I didn't want to shower and get naked around him, you know what I mean, in that place. I just wanted to go home. I was a kid. I wanted to go home. Put my drum machine down. Didn't want to take it to the Palladium, have it stolen, or leave it in George's place there. So I knock on his bedroom door, and no answer, and I thought, let me wait a half hour, and I'm looking, and it's 12:30, knock on the door, 1 o'clock, and he said, what do you want? And I said, please, George, I just want to go home. All I want to do is go home. He says, hold on a second. He slams the door, and he opens it again. He takes $1, and he throws it at me. He says, take the fucking subway, and slams the door on me. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I called a friend of mine who had a car. I said, "Are you in the city by any chance?" She goes, "Yes." I said, "Could you please take me home? I just want to go home." So she took me home. Later that night, I got on the subway. Afternoon, actually, I turned around, put the drum machine down, got dressed for the evening. We were performing that night at the Palladium. Took the subway back to 14th Street, went to 14th Street. We had a rehearsal around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The place was empty at the Palladium. If you don't know, the Palladium was Studio 54 version 2.0. Steve Intrager and Steve Rebell, and some people had invested, and this was 5 times the size of Studio 54 and pretty amazing. In fact, the DJ booth, it looked like Hollywood Squares, the TV show, and up at the top was a DJ booth, or the second from the top was a DJ booth VIP area, which took up this whole giant space and had like a library in it and like a wet bar and couches, you know, and DJ could host celebrities and friends up there while they looked down 2 stories onto the crowd down there. It was a massive place. And I remember that they're setting up the stage, they're getting the sound ready, and all of a sudden this girl comes flying in. "Where's my boyfriend?" I thought, "What?" And security comes after her, you know, "Where's my boyfriend?" You know, "Jimmy, I know you're in here and you're with that whore, Boy George." And I went, "Oh, ooh," you know, we were like, "Ooh." And we knew that George was up there because we saw this guy up there making out with this dude. "We're getting married tomorrow and it's off." And we were like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." Security pulls her out, right? So Michael and I waited around Manhattan, the Palladium from then until like 11 o'clock midnight backstage. You know, we didn't have enough money to go out and eat or anything like that, but we're going to do this thing. So we did Spirit in the Sky. Marilyn and George sang. Diva Gray, Jocelyn Brown, Boy George, Marilyn, me, Michael Rudetsky were on stage, and I was faking a keyboard that they had rented and that kind of stuff. And the Palladium was completely packed with people. I'd say the place held 3,000 or 4,000 people. And upstairs in the back, they had something called the Michael Todd Room, which was like the big club within a club, and that was packed with people. We do the show, and just a sea of people, you know, people hanging off of railings and off of the balconies and the staircase. I mean, it was packed, because the radio had announced that George was going to be at the Palladium, and that his fan club, they let like I think he said 1,000 people from his fan club came in. So after the show, they were going to have a little champagne toast up in the back of the plate in the Michael Todd Room. George doesn't travel with security or anything, and I'm a tall guy. So me and 3 other guys put their arms around and made a circle around George, because we were tall, bouncer kind of dudes, and we walked George through the crowd of pushing people, you know, and George is there sweating with makeup, and he's taking his little powder puff and reapplying his makeup. And we get up there, and it's a little more controlled chaos, but it's really crazy, and it's super hot. And then it was like, forget it, we're going to Area Club, because they were going to do an after party called Breakfast in Bed with Boy George. And it was Cornelia Guest, Art Corey Hay. I can't remember some of the other people that were hosting this, you know, this party at Area. And they're like, "Are you going?" George is like, "Are you going?" I said, yeah, we'll figure out a way. We found some people that were going down. Oh no, we got George downstairs and into his limo, and it took off. George didn't invite me in the limo, I guess, whatever, you know, he didn't have to. And we managed to find somebody who was going down there in a cab. "Hey, can we go with you?" We get down there, we go to the party, and the Palladium is packed. They have like a big bed set up on a portable stage with a backdrop, and they made it look like, you know, in Macy's or in one of these Harrods, one of these stores where they'll have like a fake bedroom set up, you know what I mean? And there was a hot plate, and they were cooking pancakes or flapjacks or whatever you call them from your part of the world, you know, pancakes and eggs. And George was sitting in bed, and they were all goofing and feeding each other while people were dancing around them, right? And it was about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and, you know, stuff is going on, and George has an asthma attack. Now, I have asthma, so I know what it's like. And I thought, oh my God, it's really hot in here, bad for asthma. and stuff is going up his nose, and it's making it worse, and I can't breathe. And people go, oh, come on, just do this, take that, and you feel better. So I walked up to George and I said, I have asthma. Let me get you out of here. I didn't have an inhaler with me. Did I have an inhaler? I think I had Primatene Mist, and I did. I had Primatene Mist. I remember. I just grabbed him and I pushed him through the crowd and out through a set of doors into the back alleyway. And George is sitting down. I gave him the inhaling. I could breathe. I could breathe. And I noticed at the end of I said, let me get your car. You don't need to be here. You need to go home at 6 o'clock in the morning. Down at the end of the narrow alley, a photographer's coming up. And George panicked and he took out his little makeup thing and he's putting makeup on because he's white and pale and splotchy and doesn't have air, just had an asthma attack. And this guy running up the alleyway, he's going to get the scoop. And I went up to him and I said, listen, you motherfucker. I said, leave him alone. Don't you dare take a picture. The guy's like, yeah. I said, well, I'm from Brooklyn. If you do it, I'm going to beat the fucking shit out of you. And I was a big guy. I was a little guy. And I talked him down and I said, don't you dare tell anybody out there because I'll find you. And he went back out of the driveway figuring that George would have to come around the front to get back in and he would get his picture. I managed to put George off into a little corner. And he, catching his breath, putting on makeup, and I told the limo to come around the other side. He came down the alley from the other way, door open, put George in the car, and the limo pulled away and stopped, and the window rolled down, and I walked up, and I said, are you okay? He reached a hand out. He says, I love you. Thank you so much. You saved my life. Thank you for caring for me. He says, you're a wonderful person. I'll never forget it. Thank you. I said, don't worry about that. You just go home, back to the hotel. You relax. Get some sleep. I'll check in with you tomorrow. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. I left, I think, because there's no other reason to be there. The party was over. Next day, around noon, 1 o'clock, I called to the Helmsley Palace. I had the number right up there and the room number. And Marilyn picks up the phone and I said, hi, it's Manny. Is George okay? Click. I was like, what? Call back again. Hello? Yeah, hi, it's Manny. We don't know any Manny. Hangs up the phone. And I went, oh, Jesus. Call back again. It's Man Parrish. Don't hang up the phone. Is George okay? Don't you ever call back here again. We don't know any Man Parrish. Fuck you. And hangs up the phone. And I was like, what the hell just happened? So I called Michael Rudetsky. He was home on Long Island. I woke him up. I said, Michael, something's going on. George, they hung up on me. I saved this guy's life the night before, gave him an asthma inhaler, you know what I mean, and put him in his car. He said, let me call and see what's going on. So Michael called and talked to him, called me back about 20 minutes later. He goes, Manny, they don't want to be around you. I said, what did I do? He goes, you didn't do anything. He said, they told me that they didn't want to be around you because you didn't get high, you didn't do drugs, and you made them feel uncomfortable because you were the only sober person around. I've been in the music business. People have done coke and heroin and weed and drink. I don't care if you party or get high. I mean, it's part of the trademark of being in the business, right? Like, I'm going to judge, really seriously. So that was the story that I got. So later on, a couple of days later, Michael said, George called me and inviting me to do some music with him in London. I said, Michael, if you work with George, we're talking on the phone, I said, I'll never work with you again. I said, he owes me $10,000 in Skip Town, and there was some rumor about a fur coat, which I have to Google. It was just shady, and George had left town. And Michael's like, oh, come on, I gotta do this. This is my real crack at doing something real music. I'm gonna get to co-write this album, and I don't remember if it was a Culture Club album, or I think it was a first Boy George solo album, and I'm gonna make some money and finally get somewhere in the business. I said, Michael, he's bad news. I'm telling you, I got screwed. You're gonna get screwed. If you work with Michael, I will never work with you again, because I was protecting my best friend. Well, I'm going to stop the story just about here, because Michael wound up going to London. He told me he was going to his grandmother's house on the West Coast, and you could Google it. Michael died in George's apartment. What happened afterwards, his mother told me a story that's unbelievable. Now, there were two other little incidences. I was at the at Heaven Club in London, and I said, "That's weird. George hasn't been around all week." When we were there for the man-to-man thing, the publicist said that I flew to London. I was there illegally because you're supposed to get working permits to mix records. I was there to seek Boy George and beat him up because my friend died in his apartment and all that kind of stuff. So rumor had it that this queen said that George didn't want to come out and go anywhere where I might go because I might beat him up in front of the newspapers, just to get my face in the picture again. So fast forward, I worked with the Village People, and we played in something called a holiday camp, which is kind of like a vacation club, English style, difficult concentration camps. I used to joke because they would have all these bunks and these buildings, and then there was a main building where you ate and another main building where they had shows, and these were quite popular. And our promoter, Tony Denton from England, that handled us as the Village People, also booked Boy George. George played Friday night, and I don't remember if it was George solo or Culture Club. It was probably George solo. And Saturday night, the Village People were headlining. So we went out a day early. They brought us in a day early to get over the jet lag, and just we could rehearse the next afternoon and all that kind of stuff. And George went on. We watched the show, and then I'm standing backstage, and our Village People dressing room was here, and George's was like the next one over. Crowded hallway between the Village People and Boy George and their entourage and people that managed to sneak backstage. It was really crowded. And I'm leaning against the wall. I think I was smoking cigarettes. I didn't want to smoke in front of the guys, if I remember. Smoking a cigarette, and the door opens, and George sticks his head out, and he's looking to see which one of his friends, and he zooms in on me, has this look on his face, and slams the door. And I thought, whatever, drama queen, whatever. I go back into the dressing room, put my cigarette out, and Tony Denton comes in and goes, "What did you do to Boy George?" I said, "What are you talking about? I smoking a cigarette in the hall." He goes, "He said he's upset or fearing for his life that you're here, and he immediately called for his car, and we were like 4 hours away from London, and he wants to go back to London immediately, and he just left, and he blamed it on you." And I thought, wow, I've got this much power over him? Whew, whatever, My friend Koby Koehl, Koehl, Koby Koehl, is an amazing singer. You can Google his stuff. He's got the voice of an angel, and I've worked with him. Boy George called him over to London to work with him. Thought he was the most incredible voice, what I do. And when he was over there, he asked Koby, this is what Koby told me now, he asked Koby to sing some stuff, which Koby did, and then he wanted Koby to record or sing something derogatory in Yiddish, in Hebrew, because Koby had been in Israel and learned the language and all that kind of stuff, and George wanted to sing something nasty, and he said, "I'm not going to do that." So what does George do? George kicked him out of the house with no airplane return ticket, no money, not a place to just threw him literally right out on the street, and George's brother had to come and take him off the street and bring him in and get him an airplane ticket home. So the George story is a mess. I got a whole other part of it, which I'm not going to tell until I get a book deal or some sort of a deal. But there's a lot of stuff going on there. That's my Boy George story. I've been telling it to my friends for years in bits and pieces. It's hot here today. I'm sweating. It's a warm day. Turn the air conditioner up. Anyway, that's my Boy George story. That's what happened. And I think this basically closes the video series. Tomorrow, the next thing is just going to be a final chapter epilogue, tidy up a few things, say why I'm doing this and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm thinking about maybe doing a new channel. So if you want to follow me over to another channel, subscribe to this, and I'll put up some sort of a notice. I'm thinking about doing some live stuff, and maybe doing, for the tech heads, maybe peer over my shoulder as I'm mixing and recording so you could see how that process is done. I got to figure all that stuff out, but thank you so much. Please subscribe so I could stay in touch with you. I'm on Facebook, Man Parrish Artist. I'm on iTunes. Please buy my music, don't steal it. And thank you so much for caring and watching, and comments are always appreciated. I love you guys so much. Thank you.